Howdy folks and welcome. I am a massive nerd with over 15 years of experience in the world of trading card games. From playing at competitive levels to collecting, selling, and buying, I've done so much, good lord. While Pokemon has always been my first love, over the years I've explored everything from well-known TCGs to hidden gems in the indie scene. I've also been privileged enough to work as an operations manager at a local game store, where I was given a front row seat to the ins and outs of TCG while furthering my love and passion for card games as a whole. I've always dreamed of creating my own game, and after years of immersing myself in the TCG world, I finally took the plunge. My first game, Gates of Amalgam, was a massive learning experience. While I'm proud of what I created, it's clear that it's got some flaws that need fixing. So I've decided to put that project on pause and take everything I've learned into a brand new game. And, of course, a brand new channel to document the journey. Welcome to Aquology. Here, I'll be sharing my design process from idea creation to rule balancing and playtests. I'm hoping to offer insights into the many mistakes I've made along the way, and helping you avoid the same pitfalls if you're thinking of creating your own TCG. With that, thank you for watching, and let's begin. In this video, we're going to go over how you actually come up with the idea and theme for your card game. When making an idea, there are a couple of different core concepts you're going to want to have in mind. This first one is, basically at its core, are you going to have booster packs for your game? For example, the game Command of Nature by Unstable Games is a fully formed box game. What I mean by this is all the cards you need are within the box of the game. Deck creation, as well as everything the game needs, is within the box. They do have a Sand and Wind add-on, but once again, there is no pack opening. It's all just in the box. Now, let's take your standard Pokemon, Magic, etc., where deck creation is an external action, not an internal one. Yes, you can buy starter decks, but the game itself heavily pushes for you to buy booster packs to augment those starting decks. New sets are released at certain intervals to introduce new cards. The reason this is important is depending on which you choose, this can decide how broad or narrow your main theme will be. For conversation's sake, let's separate these two types of games into boxed games and expansion games. If you choose to go with a full boxed game, you can make your theme as narrow or as broad as you want because you won't have to worry about creating expansions. Now, a boxed game will typically want to be more narrow, but we'll talk about that later. A good example of this is the game Wormspan. It's based off of dragons, and there are a total of 183 different dragons, meaning 183 different designs. While this may seem like a lot, keep in mind that Pokemon has over 1,000 different Pokemon designs, and Magic has to come out with new designs for every expansion. For an indie game, this can make designing daunting, so having a fully boxed set with a very streamlined theme can be really useful. At the same time, this also has the downside of potentially stifling some levels of creativity by being so narrow as you can only have a certain number of designs. At its core, a boxed game design does not require the creator to always have to be making new things, and they can thus make their theme as narrow and as specific as they want. Let's look at the flip side and what happens if you have too much creativity or too broad of a theme. And to do this, I'm just going to use my first game, Gates of Amalgam. My broad theme was the idea that all human subconscious is connected to the amalgamous plane. If a human could imagine something existing, it could be called forth from certain portals. My thought process being, as I chose to go with an expansion-based game, that I would not hinder any creativity and thus I could create whatever I wanted. Here's the issue. Because I placed absolutely no guardrails on myself regarding design, there's no coherent design philosophy. Yes, I tried to place some guardrails with the additions of the elemental and combat type classes, but in the end they did very little to actually kind of keep things in line. I ended up disliking more of my designs than liking them because there was no philosophy behind it. So the question then is, what type of game do you want to make first? And then, what is the theme? Having been around expansion games for so long, and my first attempt being expansion, I'm actually going to try again at making an expansion-based game with a little bit more of the boxed concept, but we'll talk about that in a later video. This means that my theme can be broad enough to allow for continued expansions, but specific enough that I don't fall into the same trap of too much freedom that Gates gave me. Choosing boxed or expansion first will help you narrow down on a theme. You can, obviously, choose a theme first and then decide boxed or expansion. This is just simply how I ended up where I am now. So now I know which of the two types of games primarily I want to make. Now we have to come up with the actual theme. What is the purpose? What is happening in the game? This is a highly personal process that you really can't make a step-by-step guide on, but I can walk you through my thinking and how I came to Aquology's game theme. Growing up, I loved water. The aquarium, prehistoric water creatures during the Devonian era, all the fossil creatures from Pokemon, and most recently, one of my favorite games of all time is Dredge. I also have a tendency to really enjoy fishing mechanics in video games. This is where I got the start to my theme or idea. I wanted to work with water and sea creatures. That's interesting in and of itself, but in my head it wasn't enough. I needed to add something else. You couldn't just have Stingray. Now, I did think originally about going with a pure nature-based game where you would have the great white shark, you would have the orca, so on and so forth. And the cards themselves would have interesting facts about the creatures. The issue is, while this is cool as a concept, when it comes to designing the artwork for the card, it left A, very little room for creativity, B, I'm admittedly not the best artist as a whole, and C, in my opinion, it wouldn't have made the art stick out. It wouldn't have made the game stand out in any meaningful way that I would be happy with. So with that, I went back to the drawing board, for lack of a better word, and I thought about what did I like about Dredge so much? Turns out I loved the mutations that they created. I loved that the mutations were based off of real creatures, but morphed into their own eldritch horror show. This would be the basis of my theme. I wanted to work with mutated sea life of all kinds, from fish to turtles, rays to sharks. Now, Dredge is based off of Lovecraftian horror, and while that's cool, I've always found scientific mutations to be more interesting. This is ultimately how I came to my theme. Scientists using different types of mutagens on fish eggs to create a plethora of mutated sea life. This did two things for me. The first is that it set up the design guardrails I didn't have in Gates while still giving me a lot of creative freedom. And two, it gives me the ability to expand as necessary without having to scrape the bottom of the barrel of ideas, such as making a creature based off of an ice cream cone. Just saying. What I mean is, I could say have 100 designs in the first set. The second set can then use elements of the prior set, such as the same base fish, take a puffer fish, but change its mutation so that, at its core, it's still a different creature and card. I'll go over how I actually think about designing my creatures in a follow-up episode, as well as the actual design of a card, but I hope this first episode at least helped a little when it came to understanding idea and theme creation. Thank you all for watching. If you have any comments or you think I missed anything, please let me know. I'd be happy to do an update video, and have a great rest of your day. Peace.